Hi guys, I wanted to talk to you today because I've been getting a lot of emails from students saying that they are struggling passing quizzes and they don't know what to do about it. And I've been asking these students, tell me about how you study, and almost all of them have responded, I listen to the lectures, I read the books, I take some notes, and then I skim the notes all week long before I have to take the quiz. And that is not the best way to study. Research shows that reading has one of the lowest rates of memory retention than any form of studying. Teaching another person, or even better, doing some activity that incorporates the learning are the two best ways of learning. So I want to start with how to read the textbook, and then I'm going to make another video about how to actually do the studying so that hopefully you guys can do better in this class. Psychology is one of, I don't like to bash my own field, but it is one of the easier classes that you can take in college. So if you are not succeeding at studying for a psychology class, you are really going to struggle in future classes. So watch this video, watch the next videos that I put out about how to study, and yeah, go for it, you can do it. All right, so when most students read their textbook, they start at the beginning of the chapter and they read to the end like a novel. And that is really a bad idea. That is not how you should be reading a textbook. A textbook is not a novel. It's not as interesting as a novel, for one. I wish they were more interesting, but I'm not a textbook author, so there's nothing I can do about it. But you can't approach a textbook the way you would approach a regular book. So the first thing that you should be doing when you read a textbook is you should flip through the chapter and just see what's in it. You know, look to see if there's interesting pictures, what's the title of the chapter, you know, what things do they throw in there, what charts, does anything stand out to you as particularly interesting, and just kind of flip through it and get a general familiarity for it. And you're going to see as we go through these steps of how to read your textbook that the idea is that you're building a neurological framework for storing the information that you are then going to study. So you have to have a place to file the information away in your brain, or else it's just going to be randomly shoved in there, and then you will have a hard time retrieving it when you need to access your long-term memory for a quiz or an exam. Step 2, you are going to flip to the end of the chapter and you are going to go through the quiz or the summary, or both if they have it. So just depends on the textbook. Flip to the end of the chapter and you will either have a quiz or a summary, or if you're lucky, you'll have both. Now, why do you want to read the summary or go through the quiz before you've even gone through the chapter? Because what would an author put in a summary or a quiz? The author would put whatever they think is the most important information for you to learn in the chapter. So again, this is building your framework for where to store things in your mind and what to pay attention to, so that when you read the book, you will have a focused attention on what the most important parts of the chapter are. And it's the same thing with the lecture. There's many things in the textbook that I don't lecture on because it's not as important. Now, could there be a question about the unimportant stuff? Yeah, sure. That's why you also read the textbook. But you need to get the most important things first. And if you have, you know, like a really well organized filing system for this information, then it's much easier to remember the smaller details, as well as obviously the big details, which many of you are not even getting those not because you're not smart, not because you're not capable, but because you just don't have the organizational system in your brain, and you don't have the focused attention on what's important, because that's how the brain works. The brain looks at what's important, and if it's not important, it filters it out. That's how the brain is supposed to work. So you are stacking the deck against yourself by not knowing what's important in what you're studying in the textbook. Step 3, you're going to flip through the chapter again, and now you're going to see what headings and titles and subheadings there are. Again, the reason is if an author has gone through the effort of putting a title, putting a heading, putting a subheading, then the author obviously thinks this is important. And when you read a section, the point of that section is whatever the heading or the subheading is about. So again, this is building that framework in your mind, and it's focusing your attention so that you are paying attention to what is important, because there's all sorts of fluff in a textbook. And you have to be able to, your brain has to be able to filter out what's important enough to remember and what's just the fluff that can be tossed out. That's just there because it's just interesting or because it's helping to flesh out whatever the point of the heading is. Usually every heading, and especially subheading, has one major point to it, and the subheading tells you what it is. So before you read anything, go through and check what are the titles, what are the headings, what are the subheadings. And even write this out on a paper. This is your framework for taking notes, just like it's your framework for your memory in your brain. Step 4 is something that I didn't know about when I was a student, but I really wish I had of. So I highly suggest that you do this one as well. So step 4 is you go through every single paragraph and you read the first sentence and the last sentence. Assuming the author is good, and I feel like I picked good textbooks for you, a good author will introduce the paragraph in the first sentence and wrap it up in the last sentence, and everything in between is just explanation. So if you read the first and the last sentence, then you really will get a concept of what you are going to be learning. Now, let me stress, at this point, you are not reading for comprehension. You aren't even trying to understand any of this. You're just trying to get a map of what you are going to learn, what is coming, what is ahead. You're prepping your brain in order to pay attention to what's important. You're hacking your brain and how your memory works. That's what you're doing. So you have to have a map of what you're going to learn in order to effectively learn it, in order to file it away properly so that you can also retrieve it efficiently during your quiz or exam, or hopefully your future life when you need to use this information. So again, don't worry about comprehension, just worry about what are you going to be learning. And again, while you're doing this, you could be writing out a notes outline of the structure of the textbook, and then you can fill that back in the next step, which is when you actually read the textbook. Step 5, now you read the chapter. And now you have an organizational system in your brain. You have neuronal structure set up in order to build memories around these concepts. And not only that, but the neuronal connections that you make are now done efficiently so that you can retrieve the information well, particularly when you're under stress and having test-taking anxiety. So I know what a lot of you are saying, this is a lot of work, and it is a lot of work. It would be a lot easier to go watch Netflix. But it's a lot easier than reading the chapter over and over again. I never read a chapter more than once in my entire college, master's, graduate, doctoral school career. Never read it more than once. If you have a systematic approach for organizing the memories in your brain, you will not have to read a chapter over and over again. And I mean, if you think about what's harder than studying this way, what's harder is, reading the chapter multiple times, cramming for the exam all night the night before, praying all day that you pass this exam, and then you fail and you have to retake the class all over again. That's a lot harder than just taking a few extra minutes to prepare before you study. It's way easier if you do that. Remember the saying, repetition is the mother of all learning. Repetition is the mother of all learning. Repetition is the mother of all learning, okay? You learned that really quick. So what you're doing with this studying method is you are repeating the core information. So you're exposing yourself to what's important, what the author thinks is important, and then you're just sort of fleshing in the details. And what this does is it actually activates what's called the reticular activating system in the brain. And what the reticular activating system is it's your internal radar. It pays attention to what is salient or what's important in life, because you can't pay attention to everything, right? If people who pay attention to too much stuff have what we call attention deficit disorder. They can't focus because they're paying attention to so many things. Everything is important to their reticular activating system. So you want to focus that system to say, these are the important things, focus on these, and then the brain will actually shuttle that into long-term memory because it was deemed important. So it's like, St. Patrick's Day, you never pay attention to the fact that people are wearing green, but now it's St. Patrick's Day, so you're noticing all the green clothes everywhere. That's your reticular activating system focusing your internal radar on what's important. So you want your reticular activating system focused on the important pieces of the textbook, what the author thought was important enough to put into bold print, headlines, put into the summary or the quiz of the chapter. And if you can hack, do biohacking, you can hack your reticular activating system to focus on what's important, then studying will be 1,000 times more effective. All right, so try that. Let me know how it goes. All right, good luck.